Welcome to episode 57 of On My Studio Table. I'm so glad to be able to share this video with you today, and I really appreciate your joining me. And if you haven't subscribed already, would you please subscribe? And I always love to see your comments. Today I'm going to share with you a few things that I've been working on, including some new projects and also some ideas about how you can use your artwork and extend it to be used in other artworks without compromising the original piece. So more about that later. I'm also going to bring you up to date on developments with the Coverlet of Comfort, with the Circle Project journal, and a few other bits and pieces, some of which I have shared a little while ago, but they were still just ideas then. I still haven't been 100%. I've shared in my last video that I've been quite sick with a really awful flu virus, and that's left me with some asthma, and that's still lingering, but I have to say that I'm so much better than I was. And the photos at the opening of this video I took on a walk the day after the video aired last time, and I just was so enjoying being outside after being cooped up all week. I didn't quite get cabin fever because I've got stitching to keep me sane, but it is nice to be at the other end of that. But yes, as I said, the asthma is still lingering. It's not severe, but it is something that I have to just manage. So I hope you enjoy this video. I hope you enjoy the scenery around where I live. And yes, if you feel like hitting the like button, I would really love that also. In my last video, I shared with you that I'm planning a new class. My classes are now all becoming on demand. They are also evergreen and self-paced, and this one will be like that also. So I've called it Earthscape because it's been inspired by the landscape and the earth around me. And it's embroidery for beginners, but it is also something that people with more advanced skills can enjoy. And this can also be just a springboard. It doesn't have to be exactly according to my pattern. It may be that you start with this design and then you add your own embellishments. So as I've been working on preparing this class, I've started on a sample using some of my own eco-printed cloth. This is a lovely textured weave, which I think is cotton, and it's vintage. And the marks on the background really add to the depth of the whole effect. As you can see, I've done some stitching also, and the stitching is quite subdued and subtle, which I felt suited this background. But the thing is that you can use any colours you like, you can use any background you like, and I'll give you lots of ideas in this course about how to approach that. Just for this particular example, I'm using the subtle colours that I talked about. As you know, my favourite threads are these. I do use other threads as well, of course, stranded cotton, wool embroidery thread, linen embroidery thread, and silk embroidery thread also, just whatever I think a piece needs. So I'm sticking with these for this particular one that I'm working on, but I will probably use different threads and different colours in other examples that I make for the class. So just stay tuned. I will keep telling you a little bit about this without giving away the whole class, of course. But it will be a very enjoyable class, I think, where you can just do some simple stitching, take your time, add your own touch to it, choose your own colours, choose your own substrates. And there are 5 different designs that you'll be able to choose from. I've really enjoyed preparing this, and there's still a lot of work to do, of course, because I need to make the videos and do the notes. But I think that it will be a class that will really help you to explore different things that you may not have explored before, or develop things that you already have worked at. So I will keep sharing about this as we go along. Several videos ago, I shared with you a wonderful gift that arrived in the mail from overseas, and a beautiful thank you card. It was just so lovely to receive this, and such a wonderful surprise. It was from Gretchen, and I just want to say thank you again, Gretchen, if you're watching this. And I said at the time when I shared this that it coincided with the arrival of a package of fabrics and threads which I'd ordered from the Thread Studio. I belong to their online group, and you can access discounts and special items that are not available generally in their online shop. And I just thought that the colours went so well together. Even though this is a copyrighted image and I can't use it, that inspired the use of these colours. And as I said, they arrived pretty much on the same day, at least the same week. I wanted to use what Gretchen wrote inside the card as part of this new work that I'm thinking about. And this morning I had a bit of a go at a few ideas which I think might work for this. What I did was that I tore up a photocopy of the letter, because I don't want the writing to necessarily be legible or able to be understood. What I want to do is to use it as part of the layering process when I make this work. I wanted to print it out on cloth. This is a piece of silk organza. Now you can actually buy this to use in your textile art, and it has a backing on it so that it will feed through your printer. So if you just look closely here, you'll see that I'm peeling this off, and you can see that this is a semi-transparent piece of fabric. It's actually said silk organza, and I think this would be great for layering. But after I did this, I had another thought. I thought, what if I print over the top of that text with one of my eco prints? So I got one of my eco prints on paper, and this is, I hold it sideways so it will sort of fit in the camera shot, and it features bracken fern and eucalyptus and a little bit of lomandra, and I just love this print. It's actually for sale at gonerustic.com. So here we have the torn strips which I placed on the bed of my printer. Then I printed it onto this silk organza which has the backing. I fed that through the paper tray, and I had this under the cover for photocopy. That then printed over the top of the text. And I'm very, very happy with the result of this. I really, really like this. And I think after that process, this will really suit the other colours that I have here. And again, I can peel it off and it will be semi-transparent. So if I hold this up, you can see my hand through it. It becomes much less visible, but very, very subtle. So I think that this will be the piece that I will use. It also printed through to the backing sheet, which is paper. So I will keep that as well, because that may either be incorporated into this work or into another work. So nothing is wasted. The same with these. I can actually use these also, maybe for journaling, maybe for collage book pages, and I could add colour to them also. Although being an inkjet print on paper, it might smudge if I put water on it or any kind of liquid. This will not smudge. This is actually permanent. So it's actually a good way to add things to it, but it also means that you're making your other work work for you. So I've done the work of eco printing on this thick paper, but I'm actually making it work for me again. So this is how you can really make your artwork be extended. It's not just the initial piece that you've done, it's actually what you can do with it to develop it and to make it into something that you can use in your artwork. If you're interested in trying this technique using the silk organza, this is the one that I've used. I'm not sure if there are other brands. This one is a Jacquard brand, and it's called Extravaganza, and it's for use with inkjet printers. If you printed directly onto unprepared silk, it would actually wash out with water. This silk has been prepared so that the ink becomes permanent, and you can use it for all sorts of things. And I've found it's very, very useful. I've used it before, but not for a while, and I thought this would be just the ideal product to use again. You can get other types of fabrics also. I have one that's a little bit like a thin calico, and I'm not sure if there's a thicker silk. I think there is one that's not transparent that you can also get. So lots of possibilities with that. We're now in July, and so we're doing the next section for the Coverlet of Comfort with Kathryn Chambers of Kathryn Cloth Tales. And I was rummaging through my things, and it's amazing what you find when you do a bit of rummaging. And I found this fabric, which I had commissioned from a Tasmanian artist who does indigo dyeing. And this was what was left over. So I got this out and I thought, this is exactly the right blue for my coverlet. And then I fished out a few other fabrics, especially some that were quite small scraps, with different colours that I thought suited my coverlet for the next stage of this project. One of the things that Kathryn suggested was to do some little squares and make them into 9 patches. She also suggested hexagons, which is the shape that she's going for. And I thought, well, I'd like to try some squares. So these squares, which are very small, they're only 3.75 inches along each side, really seem to work together with the colours that I chose. Some I've used in the coverlet, some I've added in. The little squares that are joined together are only 1.25 inches. So it is quite small, as you can see, in comparison to my hands. When you look at the back, you can see that I've used a foundation paper piecing method, an English paper piecing method it's often called. And I stitched the seam allowances over the edges using a basting stitch. That will come out once I decide where it's going to go, and the papers will come out also. But I'm leaving them in for the moment just to make sure that they stay in shape. I've also made a whole lot of other squares out of the little scraps that I had. And I have an idea that some of these might break free. So in other words, here we have a contained 9 patch with 9 squares in each block. But if some of those broke free, they perhaps could look like they're tumbling down the background. Earlier this week, I had a bit of a play with some tea dyeing and rust printing. So I took a piece of the indigo dyed fabric that I told you about, and also a piece of fairly coarsely woven cotton, I think. I found it in a charity shop, so I'm not really sure of the content. And I also used the same fabric here. This has been tea dyed, so I just put a whole lot of tea bags in a container, put some hot water on it, let it soak for a while, and when it was cool, I took the tea bags out and put the fabric in, and I just scrunched it up and put it in, and I left it till it was cold. And then I took it out, squeezed it out, and with all of these, I also washed them in the machine. This one, I also pre-soaked in tea. And then I had some metal bits which had been given to me, but also some that I already had. And I laid them on top of the fabric, put some of my rusty things, including these lovely big rings, and I folded it back and forth like this so that both sides got printed. And it really ended up quite interesting. I used things like nails, which you can see here, metal pieces of indeterminate origin. I have no idea what they may have been used for. And it just makes interesting prints. There's a little washer print. It didn't turn out as dark as I thought it might, and it's possible that this is not pure cotton. That's one explanation. The other reason could be that I only used a little bit of vinegar. So when I had done the tea dyeing, I laid it down damp, put the rusty things on, and then I sprayed it with a 50% vinegar and water solution and sprinkled it with salt just to encourage the rusting process. And I think maybe the vinegar solution being 50-50 wasn't really strong enough. This one, the indigo one, came out with more distinct prints. And I think that was because I pre-soaked this in a white vinegar bath. So I didn't dilute it at all. It's only white vinegar. And I soaked it in there probably for about an hour. Then I laid the rusty pieces on and covered it with plastic. I also sprayed it with a bit more vinegar water, I should say, and sprinkled the salt over. And I seem to get better results this way. The other thing was I need to find a way to make better contact between the rust pieces and the fabric. It worked quite well with this one, not perhaps so noticeably with this one. And I did use some gravel. We've got a pile of gravel, which my husband is using to fill in potholes in our driveway, and put that on top of the plastic to weigh the whole thing down and try and make good contact. Some of the pieces are a little bit thicker. Some pieces were flat, and you can see that when there was a flat piece, it did actually print really well. The circles on the other piece were a little bit three-dimensional, and they had a ridge on them, so really only the ridge actually printed, not so much the flat bit, even though it was making contact on one side. So it's just good to observe what you've done when you do something like this and try and think of ways that you can improve it and maybe do some troubleshooting as well. I had a pair of old rusty calipers and some metal washers. Some of these I've used over and over again, and some of these are just new to me because they were given to me. So I really think that these would work, these fabrics would really work with my 9 patches and whatever else I do with them. So it may be that these will end up as my backgrounds, including my tea-dyed fabric, instead of the indigo piece. That will still come in handy because I may do more squares with the indigo. I have already done some with that fabric, and it may be used also for further stages as we go through the year. I'm just waiting for Kathryn's next instalment to see what she does with her hexagon paper pieced shapes and then gain inspiration from that. So it's quite exciting to be at this stage and making all the preparations and then seeing what eventuates. just as a follow-up, I got everything to do with the coverlet out so that you could see how it all works together. So here are the bird blocks, which I explained quite in a detailed way in my last few videos. And then here is the coverlet so far, starting from January this year. These are the fabrics that I worked on this week, the tea dyeing and the rusting. And these are the 9-patch blocks. And I really like how these colours work together. I like the combination of naturally dyed fabrics, including what I've used in these blocks. Some of these are naturally dyed also, and the others are tea dyed. And the same with the bird blocks and the rest of the coverlet. So it all works together, and then I'm hoping that whatever stitching I do will also help to make it all work together as a whole, but also individual pieces. So it's just exciting. I like the fact that I don't always know ahead of time what we're going to do in the group, but also that I don't know what I'm going to do ahead of time, because a lot of it happens as I stitch and as I contemplate what I'm doing. It's really important to enjoy what you're doing and enjoy the process. And I know people like Kathryn and Marion say this also, that you enjoy the process, and often the results will be even better than what you could have planned. So keep your mind open to those possibilities and opportunities that arise as you are working. It's a wonderful way to work, and much less stress and much less pressure. At least I think so. I've done a bit more work to the bird blocks. I was going to do some quilting. So in my last video, I said I would do some diagonal lines along the silk sari strips and then maybe echo them on either side. But when I started to do it, I didn't like it, so I took it out. And then I thought, well, embroidery can just also hold all the layers together, because, as you know, I added this foundation piece behind the bird blocks, ready to attach it to the main part of the coverlet, just to give it some body and some firmness. So I used feather stitch, not only to make sure the layers stay together instead of the quilting, but also to add foliage. These are all birds that live in and around the Australian bush, or the forest or woodland, or whatever you like to call it. And so often foliage is their best protection. I know a scarlet robin is pretty visible, but it's quite a small bird. This is probably half again, at least, bigger than life size. So foliage is very useful when a bird doesn't want to be seen. So I've done that on all 3 blocks. That's the scarlet robin. And then the brown falcon, I've done the same. And I mainly used 3 colours. So there's 2 shades of green and a soft yellow. And I did that for all of the blocks. The nice thing about it is also that you can overlap it. You don't have to keep it in its own separate area. So I've overlapped it into the sashing strips in between, down across the sari strip here, and also here, and across the little darning and mending patches that we did. And you can see the same thing here. It's across the sari strip on some of the mending patch and so on. And then the bubuk owl, also the same colours, just arranged to suit the composition in a similar way, but not the same. So I'm not sure if I'll do any more stitching now. I think the next stage will be to trim off this backing or foundation level with the sides of the blocks, and then attach it to the coverlet to make the May-June section, and that way the whole 6 months will be all together. The Circle project is another year-long project, and I'm doing this with Lisbeth Degn of Dragenkunst. And it's a great project to be a part of. It gives you challenges and inspiration, and there are guidelines to follow, but you are encouraged to put your own stamp on them and maybe even break some of those guidelines or rules, which I must say I frequently do. So these are the next two for week 26 and week 27. And as you can see, I still have to make some more of the background pages, but I'll get round to that soon, hopefully. And this time we had different stitches to do on the circle exercises. I've chosen 2 naturally dyed circles made from a thin wool, and I've chosen a background made of eco-printed wool, which was vintage blanket. This one we did 2 sizes of seed stitch, and I think I mentioned in the last video, instead of doing another circle in the middle, as shown in the example, I did a button. And we're encouraged also, but it's not compulsory, to make our spreads be uniform or complement one another. So I've been doing that quite a bit in this journal. This one is the same fabric for the background and for the circle. And I've also used the same t-shirt yarn, which has been eco-dyed, to do some couching around the edge. That wasn't a requirement of the circle exercise, but I decided to put that there partly because the raw edges were fraying a little bit. This time we were going to use fly stitch, and we could do different sizes. We could make them wonky or lopsided if we wanted to, and we could do any design that we wanted to. So I decided to do something quite random, which I like and which you probably already know. And I used 2 colours of thread for the fly stitch and then another colour for couching the yarn. And if I just hold it up, you can see it a bit closer. Hopefully it won't blur on you. Yes, so that was quite an easy exercise to do and quite quick. I also overlapped some of the fly stitches over each other, and I quite like that, so I think I may use that in future work as well. I haven't really done overlapping of fly stitches. So we are over halfway through the year now, and as you can see, I have the little labels ready for the next couple of weeks as well. And as I said, I will have to prepare some more background pages of vintage dictionary page and use teabag paper. The natural light is decreasing, so I've had to put my ring light on, and I hope it's not causing too many reflections. This is a box which we've had for quite a long time. It's an inherited box, I think maybe from around the 1920s, maybe a bit later. And it looks like tortoiseshell, but it's actually metal. No, it's not, it's bakelite. And often with bakelite, they used to do imitation kind of finishes on them. It's shaped a bit like an Egyptian sarcophagus, and around about that time the discovery of beautiful artifacts in Egyptian pyramids really inspired a lot of design. So it's rather a special little box, and inside it I have placed some little treasures. I was looking for something to put my little books in that I've been making. And so this box was exactly the right size, as you can see. This is the book that I shared with you last time, and this is a new one that I've made. And I'll just put it together. And I just thought they were perfect in this box. The one that I showed last time, I have done more work in. So when you open the pages, I had done some of these couched wool yarn lengths which were pulled from the frayed edges of eco-printed wool blanket. And I just let them fall pretty much how they wanted to fall, and then just tweak them a little bit, pin them down, and then stitch them just with a straight stitch for couching. And it's really interesting the different shapes that kind of happened. On the back, it's quite interesting also, because I've done stitches on each side of the couching before going over it. It's made an interesting pattern on the back of the page as well. This one is a little bit more organised, but I like the shape of this. And even though it's a book, there are no words except for what's on the cover. It's very textural. And I was thinking this morning when I was deciding what to say about it in this video, that for anyone who is vision impaired, it would be a lovely tactile experience. And maybe it's something that we should do a bit more often too. Just take the time to use our sense of touch. And I love the way the tea-dyed and rust-printed cloth complements the stitching. So there are 12 pages altogether in this little book, an eco-printed vintage wool blanket cover, and the title is Freedom of Touch because it's so tactile, and that's from a piece of old sheet music. As I mentioned before, I did a very simple Japanese stab binding with double thread to hold it together just in the area that the pages are in. I still had some of the eco-printed wool left, so I thought, well, I'll make another little book. So this is the little book that I've made, and I used some teabag offcuts to embellish the cover. So it complements the word strip that I used on this book, but it doesn't have words, it's just the teabag strip. This was from a darker area of the vintage blanket, still the same piece that this was cut from or torn from, and there was enough to make a flap inside. And inside, I've used the teabag papers from the tea bags that I used to print and rust the pages in this little book. In Kathryn Chambers' group on K3 Cloth Tales, she demonstrated some monogami, which is like a Japanese process to convert paper into a cloth-like substance. And I decided not to do that. I think I would really like to use these as book pages. So all I did was just fold them in half and use a very simple pamphlet stitch, 3 holes for each one, to stitch them into the cover. And I just really like the pages. I like the textures, I like the colours, I like the torn ends, and the torn ends end up like that, and that's what I've used on the cover here. And then I also just stitched a piece of t-shirt yarn, recycled t-shirt yarn, onto the spine, just by hand, and that can tie to hold it all together. So I'll just do that. And it just sits nicely in the box with the other book. The last thing I wanted to mention to you was to say thank you very much for your feedback about the idea of promoting products on my video. The overwhelming majority said, yes, go for it. So that was really lovely. And as I assured you last time, I will be very choosy about what I decide I will sponsor. I can tell you a little bit about the one that approached me last week, and that is that it is a jewellery designer based in New York, and they use recycled metals and try to limit their footprint on the planet. So that sounds just up my street, and I'll see how it all goes, and then I'll share with you what the product is, and you'll find out all about it. So it's just quite complimentary to have been approached like this. I think it means that my channel is growing, but also that there are businesses around the world that do care about their environmental impact, and they are looking for people to help them promote those products. So thank you very much for your feedback. I really, really appreciate it.